when it goes dark and then you three just show up in my life, I just want to say it makes me feel it. I feel joy. So must be Tuesday night back with Intervention on Call, intervening weekly. So far as the name of the show, but gentlemen, how are we doing?
Doing great.
Well,
Everybody knows Justin, Matt, and Brad, and Intervention on Call. And I think Matt, our pregame, you had kind of a IOC kind of announcement. Is this correct?
Yeah, so Sam couldn't be here tonight, but he wanted me to pass on. Last week was kind of a banner week for IOC. We had 5 families, from what I understand, get their loved ones into treatment. 2 of those, actually, the interventionist had to go and do the intervention in person, but they started out on IOC. The other 3, we were just able to coach them into treatment, the families into doing their own intervention and get their loved one into treatment over the phone. 2 of those families needed 2 sessions. One of those was one that I worked with, and I had the initial session with mom and dad, and then we added a brother and another sister. They were going to intervene on a third child, a sister, and so I had the second session with the 4 of them, and then we were able to get 5 people into treatment last week. So it's I think that's the most we've ever done in 1 week. And if you're a treatment center, we'd love to help you get clients that you're working with, families that are maybe a little stalled. And if you're a family that has a loved one that needs help, we'd love to hear from you. I think we can help.
If you want to sponsor this show, we're always open, but wait until we get started. So once we get Matt Brown kick started, our sponsorships normally kind of go out the window, but that's why we're raw. We're unfiltered, and what makes Intervening weekly. These are real questions. If you have a question, feel free to type it into the comment sections. If you are we get a lot after the show, and they don't want their name being put up, so we have eliminated the names on the questions. So we're just doing questions now, so you can stay anonymous. But that's fine. Totally understand it. It's whatever your choice is. But if you're watching a replay of this, you can type in a comment there. We'll get to it next week. So, guys, ready?
Ready?
Yeah.
That's a beautiful shirt, Justin.
I agree, by the way. I think it's fantastic.
I am curious to hear if you have any suggestions, resources, or experience with teen gaming interventions. I'm an LPC, licensed professional counselor, and seeing an uptick in issues in teens with online addiction. Thank you. Matt Brown.
I am. Tech addiction, gaming addiction, social media addiction. I think we're all seeing a big uptick in that. The pandemic didn't help. I think, for most young people, they kind of live in this self-imposed isolation already where there's, they're living life through a screen. But those of us that didn't necessarily grow up with a screen in our hand, I think a lot more of us have become dependent on those. And with gaming and social media really being engineered to provide that dopamine hit and keep people engaged, I think we're going to see, more and more of that. There are a couple of treatment programs that deal primarily. I thought I was going to have somebody coming into my office here. Primarily with tech addiction. There's one up in Washington State. There's another one out actually in Hawaii. The one in Hawaii doesn't deal exclusively with tech addiction, but they do have a really strong program, from what I understand, to deal with tech addiction. So yeah, I've done a few interventions over the years, probably within the last 5 years, where the primary issue has been tech addiction. No substance abuse, nothing like that. It's just been technology and gaming.
Does your game plan change any?
Not really. I mean, underneath it all, it's the same animal. The way I try to frame it for families is, whether it's substance abuse, whether it's eating disorders or compulsive gambling or gaming, it's just a vehicle. Some guys like to drive a Ford and some guys like to drive a Ferrari. And it's just a matter of, I don't feel okay right here, right now. And I've got to get over there where I'm going to feel better. And whatever vehicle we use to escape, the present moment, the mechanism behind that is really the same.
Brad, you got any experience with teens, gamings, interventions, so forth?
So, yeah, I mean, I agree with everything Matt said. We've only done a couple, and they were both successful. I will not say that that's something that we primarily deal with a lot, but we've done a couple, and the game plan was basically exactly the same. We just changed a little bit of the wording and moved things around a little bit to fit the family and make it an individualized approach.
Justin, you got anything to add?
Well, I have no experience in leading an intervention on gaming. I, like the other two, I mean, I've gotten phone calls and have spoken to families about it. I think, coincidentally, my letters, even for somebody that's struggling with substance, we don't use the word addiction or, substance. It's behavior. Because that is, like Matt said, it's the underlying issue. It's doing something to escape something else. But no, I have not had the opportunity to, actually do an intervention on someone with gaming issues.
All right, Justin, we'll get you another one. 23-year-old grandson is spiraling a pattern of alcohol and prescription pills are triggering a psychotic episode, it seems, every couple of days. Concern for his safety and ours. Got any tips for him, Justin?
Log into Intervention on Call and book a session. I think that it is most likely above that grandparents' pay grade or understanding. And it sounds like it is well past time that, somebody guides everybody on a conversation. If it's happening every couple of days now, then it's at a meeting point where, they need to have a conversation.
Matt, 23-year-old grandson spiraling, alcohol, prescription pills, psychotic episodes, seems every couple days. No, we don't know what that is. It's probably just odd behavior. It could be, but got any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, that was what I was going to say. It's like, are these true psychotic episodes where they're really disconnected from reality, or is the kid just being a jerk? And, it's probably somewhere in the middle. But the reality is the need for boundaries, the need for help is still there. And this young man obviously is not going to be able to arrest this problem on his own, most likely, if he's anything like I was. And so for the grandparents to really be willing to, at the very least, consult a professional to be able to say, okay, how can we change the behaviors that we have or the structure that we have so that the balance of power in our home is where it needs to be. I think that so many families get held hostage by a lot of what happens, and it's not out of malice or a lack of love. I think that the addiction just, it turns us into these selfish and self-centered monsters, and we really lose interest in how other people are affected or how we cause other people to feel. And so to really allow a professional to come in and guide that process, whether, like Justin said, whether it's online or whether it's in person, I think that it sounds like they're crying out for help, and they need to know help is available. It's there. They don't have to suffer in silence.
Brad, we got spiraling out, alcohol, prescription pills, psychotic episode, which just could be yelling at mom and dad or whatever it may be. What do you got?
Wow. I mean, we are seeing more and more of this demographic with the 20 to 23-year-old, 19 to 24-year-old with this exact situation. We've got actually 2 cases right now that are both 23 years old. What I think a lot of families don't understand is something Matt alluded to, that, in our addiction, we develop a whole lot of instinctive manipulations that are just a byproduct of what we do. And to the families, they sometimes they understand it's manipulation, but they don't really understand how to move forward and get around that. And so a lot of what we do in the process of educating families when it comes to an intervention, whether it's on an intervention on call or whether it's in person, is to help them see the problem and the solution for exactly what it is. And it's almost impossible to see that when you're a family member in the middle of it, when you've got somebody struggling, when it looks like what could be a psychotic episode, and that very well could be what it is. But we are seeing tons and tons of kids going into what we call marijuana psychosis. And, you know, it's just marijuana. And the family's like, it couldn't be just the marijuana, but it is. And so it's hard, you know, we have to do a full blown assessment. We have to really dig into what's going on with it, with that person and with the family, and really try to develop a plan that allows everybody to move forward and learn to support that person in the best way possible. And that looks like a lot of different things for different families, depending on the client.
Right. It's not your grandfather's weed anymore. This is all-time levels, almost 100% THC. There's something we're getting more and more, spearheading a group of us, friends. She's 34 years old, becoming evident that her drinking is getting worse. Question we have is, do we just ask her to go to treatment? Do you bring in a professional? This is ultimately, I think the overriding question I think a lot of people are wanting to know is when do you bring in a trained intervention, and when do you just ask if they're going to treatment? So Brad, we'll start with you. As far as you got a group of friends stepping in, I'm not sure with the family or anything like that, but I get this question a lot. As you know, it's not sometimes the family reaching out. They just want to know, do you just sit her down and ask her to go to treatment? When do you bring in an interventionist? What do you got for them?
So loved ones, and then the treatment is really for the client. You know, what we provide on the front end and the back end of the intervention is an educational process that allows everybody involved, whether it's family or not, to see things a little differently, kind of like I mentioned before. You know, if you don't do an intervention, if you don't do the whole process, you miss out on a whole lot of things that we provide. Even if you were to talk this person into going to treatment, you're not getting all the education around how to move forward and support them in the right way. And I would say never approach someone if you don't have a plan in place immediately for them to go to treatment. I think a lot of families, you know, have someone struggling, or friends that have someone struggling, and they just decide to sit down and talk to them and see what happens without a solution in place. And if that happens, those instinctive manipulations that I just referred to are almost always going to come out. They're almost all, I mean, I'm going to say whatever I have to say in my active addiction to get you to back off, whether it's agreeing with you and saying, okay, you're right, I need to go, but I'm not going right now, just to get you off my back, or whether it's blowing up and, you know, making all kinds of crazy threats at everybody and calling everybody names, or whether it's shutting down and not talking at all and just running away. Those are all things that we always do in our active addiction, and we don't even realize we're doing it, but it's all to sustain the path that we're on. And an intervention is, if you look at the definition of it, is really about stopping a process, and that's what it's all about. There's a process in place. This person's going down the wrong path. There's no doubt about it. Everybody around them can see it. But how do we bring somebody in that's objective, that can walk us not through just getting them to go to treatment, but a long-term recovery plan? Like, how do we hold them accountable when they leave treatment? Treatment centers are not really good in a lot of cases at doing that. And that's something interventionists provide after the intervention, to help that family or those friends create a plan that will allow that person's chances to increase to a point where they just have a really good possibility of maintaining sobriety, as opposed to just going to a treatment center and coming out and not really having anything in place to keep them well.
Well, thank you for joining us. I mean, I think we just leave on that little tidbit there. Strong, Brad, or Justin. We got a group, 34-year-old drinking. Her drinking is getting worse. Question is, when do you bring in intervention? Do you just sit them down? I think Brad really did a great job. What do you got?
Well, I think you did a great job also. I think that the challenging part, or the thing that's bothering me right now, right, is I don't care if it's me, one of the other interventionists on intervention on call, or some other trained professional interventionist, but it should be somebody. I think that you know, friends are well intended, but as Brad mentioned, I mean, you know, when you don't have some added piece of a professional there, then you're going to go, yeah, thank you, sugar and spice. I'm been noticing that too, and I'm going to make a phone call next Tuesday. You know, I I just had a case a couple of weeks ago where the mom was concerned about her daughter, roughly the same age, and we were going to do an intervention. The daughter showed up to the parents' house drunk. The mom couldn't help herself and said, "You need to go to treatment." And the daughter said, "You're right, I do." And then 4 days into treatment, she didn't like, the accountability that she was experiencing, and so she left ASA. If there had been a professional interventionist there to like guide the addict through, listen, there's going to be consequences if you don't agree to get help today. There's going to be consequences or changes that are going to take place if you leave before they feel like you're ready. And I think that, it's a marathon and not a sprint. And you cannot rush any part of the process. I think that, as also Brad mentioned, we are educating the entire team, not just the identified individual.
All right, Matt, we got a similar question. My friend is addicted to hard drugs, and I'm scared she's not too mentally secure. She refused any mention of help when I bring it up. She's estranged from her family, but know they can afford help. Here's another friend, kind of along the same lines as to, you got friends reaching out. We're not quite sure. This one, estranged from family. I don't know what that looks like, but kind of just, touch on what the two other gentlemen and what you got.
Well, this scenario is a little different because not everybody may be on the same page. And so when somebody's been estranged from family, it doesn't mean that the family is not willing to help in most cases. So what I'm always recommending, if somebody's going to be like, in this particular case where they're spearheading something like this and they're going to loop the family in later and try to get the family on board, generally what I would say is, here's what I'd like for you to do. Rather than me give you a bunch of information that you then have to pass on to the family, let's do it this way. Why don't you reach out to the family? I'm certainly happy to talk to you, sorry, my daughter's outside of my door. Could you guys hear that? Want to hear what we're having for dinner tonight? I'm just kidding.
Red Robin.
Not
Red
tonight.
Robin.
Not tonight. That was just a one-time deal. I don't want them to be the ones to have to explain the intervention process to a family that may not necessarily be connected to what the real problem looks like today. And so what I'll try to do is get them to loop the family in, get a group call together or get a session, on IOC, and let me explain the process and let them get up to speed with what's going on with their loved one while we're all there together to see if an intervention even makes sense. Sometimes families are like, no, we're done. We've tried this. It's not going to work. We're going to step back and, best of luck to the rest of you. And sometimes they'll come around and say, you know what? Okay. If we're going to get somebody to lead us and get us through this in a way that we haven't been able to do yet, we're on board. And so especially, since this comment alluded to the fact that the family is probably going to be the financial power behind all of this. Not only are they asking them to get involved in an intervention, they're asking them to pay for the intervention. They're asking them to pay for treatment. And, there's more to it than just, are you willing to be a part of the conversation?
Well, you bring up IOC, it's $150 for the session. You can have as many people on. I think this is a prime example. I think a lot of people get overwhelmed with, when do you bring in an interventionist? This is what IOC is built on. It's not a sales funnel to get to the intervention. And there's plenty of cases where, the family maybe not, no one's ready to put on hard boundaries or something. They're not ready for an intervention. We can say like, hey, an intervention wouldn't work, or we can talk them through. This is what the advantages of IOC is all about. You can get a number of us. I mean, all the friends, to family, to everyone. We can talk it through for an hour rate, and then we can set the game plan accordingly. So, I mean, I think IOC is built on that question alone. For me, is when do we bring an intervention? Do an hour-long session, see what's ready. So,
well, and to that point, if I could just jump in, the family that I worked with last week, they, I had a session with them and their other two kids, coaching them on how to do their own intervention. And at the end of that, they said, do you think that we could do this on our own, or do we need to bring you in? And I said, you know what, I really do think you can do this. And here's where you would stop so that you're not burning the bridge to have a productive conversation should you need me to come and do an intervention. But here, I think you guys have the opportunity to do this. And sure enough, Saturday morning, they sat down with their daughter. The five of them had a conversation. 45 minutes later, and they're in the car on the way to treatment.
Absolutely. It's certainly not a sales funnel to get to the intervention. Sometimes it's just talking it out. So as a mother of an addict, our family has done everything we can to help, from tough love to doing an intervention. What works when dealing with someone not interested in sobriety or help? So it takes, I think it's a son or a daughter that's obviously not showing any interest. They're using this is a long email. They use enabling, codependency, tough love. I mean, a mom's just overwhelmed. And so I think the topic or the question here is, tough love, intervention, all these buzzwords. I mean, it's our first call normally as interventionists. This is kind of what we're going through. So maybe it's just touching on that introductory phone call and what you guys talk about. And, everyone thinks that, this tough love, kick them out no matter what and stuff like that. Where are you guys on these, kind of just maybe going over your first call with the family? Justin, we'll start with you.
Well, I would want to find out what they think of as tough love, and what, could you put the question back up?
Sorry, sir.
No problem. I just killed too many brain cells and stuff in my youth.
They're just talking tough love. They're talking, intervention. You got someone that's it's shown is not willing to get help. And so that's just kind of, you got a mom that's just overwhelmed right now.
Yeah. I mean, so it's about helping her and helping her get help that she needs, which could be lining them up with a family program that doesn't require to have, a family member in the treatment, their own therapy, Al-Anon, sessions with me or one of us to, explain the addictive thinking. But I mentioned in the last answer, consequences. I really like to think of it more as boundaries. And I'll tell a family, there's a part of my letter that, clarifies if you don't agree to get some help, we're going to be implementing some new boundaries. Now, the identified individual hears those as consequences. I don't like it, to come across as ultimatums, because we all know that an addict will hear that and go, giddy up. Let's see who can hold their breath longer. So you want to have some love and boundaries at the same time.
Let's get the questions. May I ask, what do people do who are not wealthy and not able to pay for treatment programs, facilities? Brad, we're throwing a bunch of kind of questions at you, but I think I just want to eliminate the kind of redundancy. So we got, people that can't necessarily always pay for treatment. What do you guys do kind of as an interventionist resource? You got an overwhelmed mother, which I think every 99% of the calls we all get are overwhelmed. So threw a lot at you. What do you got?
So, on the first question, I've done personally a lot of interventions where somebody's told me that they've already done an intervention. And, I have yet to find anybody that has done a process like what the people on this screen provide, like a comprehensive process that moves through the entire planning process and 6 weeks, a month, 2 months, 3 months afterwards to help case manage the family, where the family has actually been able to follow the direction and the client was unwilling to go if the boundaries were held. Now, sometimes the client holds out for a long time, but if the boundaries have been held like they're supposed to be, in almost every case we've ever worked, the intervention becomes a success at some point and the client's willing to go to treatment. I don't know enough about this situation to talk any more about the specifics of it, but I would love to know more about it so I can find out how we could develop a plan that might be more comprehensive and true for that family to help not only the individual, but to help the family heal, as Justin was referring to, regardless of what the person does. And then as far as the second question, there is treatment out there for anybody. It's as simple as that, guys. It is as simple. A lot of people believe that if you don't have money, you can't go to treatment. That is absolutely not the case. We find treatment for people for free. I mean, not all the time. It's not something we do every day, but we have lots of families that call that don't have the resources for treatment. And we leverage relationships that we have with treatment centers to find partial scholarships sometimes. We drive the price down to where it's affordable to the family with the relationships we have. And there are facilities and programs out there that are no charge whatsoever, that are nonprofit type deals that people can go to. And some of them are really long term, so don't let the idea that you have to have a bunch of money to go to treatment stop you from trying to help somebody, because that's absolutely not the case.
Matt, same thing. Threw a bunch at you. Kind of just want to touch on what triggered your fancy.
So let's talk about Kathy's question first. Kathy, first of all, thank you. I think you asked a question last week as well. So thanks for being here again another week.
She's our number one fan, the gold star.
Hey, we're doing something right if we got her to come back a second week. So
we'll take it. We'll take it.
So along the lines of what Brad said, there is treatment out there. Whether you're going through a program that's funded through insurance, if the person has insurance coverage and we can find an in-network provider, if it's state Medicaid. There are a lot of programs that take Medicaid for various states or for the state that they live in, or sometimes it's based on county. If it's California or a larger state, you have to, sometimes you're geographically landlocked to the county that you're in. But there's a little different process if you're going to go through a state funded program. It's not as simple as doing the intervention, having a bed saved, and then getting them to treatment. Usually there's an assessment involved, and then they go on a waiting list. And sometimes that waiting list can be lengthy. Sometimes it can be weeks, sometimes longer. There are programs like the Salvation Army. There's programs, nonprofits like Brad mentioned, like Teen Challenge, that have locations all over the country where, they're long-term. Teen Challenge is a year program. That's where my family wanted me to go when they intervened on me back when I was 28. I didn't know it at the time because I wasn't interested enough to even ask the question, but that's where they had set for me to go to treatment. And so there's programs out there. There's Dawn Farm in Michigan, where it's a working farm and people put themselves through treatment by working on the farm. I think there's one like that just outside of Austin as well, although I can't remember the name of it right offhand. But
there's a few of them.
Yeah, there's opportunities for people out there. When it comes to the previous question, anytime there's an addiction that's sustaining itself for any length of time, there is some sort of enabling going on. There has to be. It's like the relationship between oxygen and fire. A fire can't burn unless there's oxygen present, and addiction can't survive for any length of time unless there's enabling present. And regardless of how much this mom has practiced tough love, or even tried to do an intervention, if we don't address the sources of that enabling, if it's at all possible, we're probably not going to see the outcome that we want. And so on the front end, we've got to really explore, okay, so, how is this getting enabled? How is this getting enabled financially? How is this getting enabled emotionally? Is this person living at home? And even though you're not giving them any extra cash, are you putting gas in the car? Are you paying for the cell phone? Like, there's all sorts of different ways that this can get enabled. And, of course, for a while, I enabled myself by selling drugs so that I could, fund my own habit. And so of course, that didn't sustain itself for very long, but it was a stopgap in the meantime. But once we can take the oxygen away from that fire, the fire will stop burning. Now, obviously, just the simple removal of the enabling, although it's not always that simple, but just removing the enabling is not necessarily the path to long-term recovery, but it can stop the problem long enough for someone to find the willingness to maybe look at that as an option. And so that's, I think, what's worth exploring with this particular question is, okay, even though she's willing to practice some boundaries and some tough love and even has done an intervention before, how is this person getting enabled, and how do we reach those people that are enabling this?
I think it goes to what Justin was talking about, going to a family program. There's a lot of programs out there that you can go to a family program and not have a client within the program itself. And so, we go on and on about this topic. I mean, I get all these families saying, like, how am I enabling? Everything. Like, I agree with what you're saying, Matt, but it also put a big bow on this. I mean, this is what a trained intervention, a trained professional is all about. There's resources that we have availability. I mean, we can talk through it. We're outside the cube of the family. It's just a real powerful experience. Hey, they pay our bills, but I mean, this is just what IOC was built on. I mean, you can do an hour-long session, but there's so many family programs, so much help out there that your addict may be out there struggling and breathing for their oxygen, which is drugs and alcohol, but you guys can get better. There's nothing ruins, like Matt's right. Nothing would ruin someone's addiction. If I was out there struggling in addiction and I found out my mom and dad's at some family program and come back, and you'll notice a different way to communicate if you learn anything at the family program. So last question. My wife does not talk to her family, and my family isn't really close to my wife. Her drinking, her friends are all heroin addicts like her. So you got drinking and heroin addict. It'd just be me at the intervention. So they want to know, is like, you just have husband and wife. They're probably watching A&E and seeing these large rooms with intervention or people in the circle. So experience, kind of just go around the horn with, kind of small interventions, or you got this husband, and it'd probably be the husband and wife looking for advisement. Let's go, Brad, we'll start with you.
So yes, I've done a bunch. I've done a handful of interventions where it's just one other person. And it doesn't change anything as far as the way we approach the whole situation. The exact same process is put in place, the exact same education, the exact same preparation, and the exact same boundaries, like Justin was talking about, if in fact the person's not willing to go take a break from life and get back on track. I mean, something Justin mentioned earlier, we don't talk about addiction and drinking and the ways that you've hurt the family maybe and all that kind of stuff. The process is a process, and if we work the process, the outcome is usually what we want, whether it's actually on intervention day or 2 or 3 or 4 weeks later. As long as you follow the process, the odds are in your favor that your person will go. It's just really hard as a family member who's in the midst of this, and I've lived it. The reason I do this is because of the struggles I had with my ex-wife. I thought I could fix it because I'd been in recovery for a long time, and I couldn't. And it consumed me. And I know what families go through when they're consumed with somebody else's addiction. And it's so hard to see things for what they are. And so a lot of times I tell people, one of the biggest gifts of recovery is on a good day, I can see things for what they are. And one of the biggest gifts of being an interventionist is sometimes I can show people how to see things for what they are.
Yeah, I did what called an intervention, basically with a brother, and the brother walked in. It was just his 40-year-old brother. He walked in and goes, "This is an intervention?" And the brother goes, "Oh, just take a seat." And the guy goes, "This is an intervention, and I can't even get anyone to show up to my intervention. I'll go." So like it was like that. Justin, what do you got?
Well, You just stole my thunder. I want to piggyback on Kathy's question though, real quick. In Minnesota, I mean, you don't have to have insurance. You don't have to have money. If you want treatment, you can get it. And it is, 50 days, 90 days. It's for however long you need that level. And, I mean, I think all of us on here, one of the beauties of Intervention on Call is we are actually now finally, there's a platform where we can get some reimbursement for our experience and knowledge of these programs. I've had Recovery in Action for 11 years, and I have no idea, and I don't care, how many thousands of hours were given away for free to help somebody, whether it was the individual themselves or a family member, find a resource. I've done the intervention where it's just the husband and we're intervening on the wife, and we can use, again, the perk of having a professional there. If there's a lot of people, aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, or just one person, we can use the number as a message. And like that brother said, nobody else cared to show up. That's a pretty loud message right there.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the flip, what you're kind of saying, Justin, I think the families can invest in $150 for the hour-long session. I've noticed that when they have the investment up front, there's buy-in, there's involvement, there's taking of notes. Those calls, those introductory calls. I think once you get investment on the families, there's a new level of seriousness too. So I think it works both ways with us being able to go one-on-one, centered, focused for an hour long. The family is also bought in, and I just noticed they take a lot more notes and stuff. Matt, what do you got?
Before I answer, let me just go circle back to Kathy. And Kathy, not to put you on the spot, but if you're still with us, you've been now 2 weeks asking questions. I'm going to ask if is there somebody in your life that needs help that you're asking these questions about? And if so, would you be willing to get a little bit more specific with us while we're here live about we want to do this anonymously, but would you let us maybe help you in your particular case? Would you let us in on what's going on, who this person is to you, and maybe, what you're looking to do, and see if we can answer some more specific questions for you tonight?
Going bold, Matt. I like this. I mean, you know what? You all have brought it today. Gold stars for all three of you.
Sam and I will do this sometimes when we go on TikTok Live. We'll get somebody who's, they're asking questions, and it's like, okay, well, let's see if we can't get some help going on here. And so we'll actually coach somebody through, their situation while we're live on TikTok. And so, in terms of the question that was just posted here about the gentleman and his wife, just because she hasn't talked to her family doesn't mean they don't want to get involved. It doesn't mean that they wouldn't want to help. We push people away. And so what I would say is, let's explore that first. Saying that they're estranged from their family, sometimes that's a one-sided estrangement, and the family's keeping their distance simply because, it's like hugging a porcupine. Like every time they get close, they get hurt. And so you want to make sure, sorry, I didn't mean to make you laugh.
I needed that.
You want to make sure that everybody who would want to be involved, even if the current condition of the relationships isn't great, if historically these have been important relationships, let's see if we can't get everybody together. Having said that, if it's just the husband and myself sitting down to do the intervention, that can be an incredibly powerful intervention. And the friends who are in active addiction, I've done interventions where there's other people in the room that have a significant problem with alcohol or drugs. I did one intervention one time where the guy's drug dealer was in the room. And it's like, buddy, if your drug dealer's here and he's telling you that he's worried about you, let's pay attention to that. same thing. You know, if there's other people in the room that are struggling, it's like, listen, these are not prudes that are sitting here trying to tell you to go get some help who have never had a drink. These people know their way around a bottle or a heroin syringe in this case. Like, let's pay attention here. And I'm not saying that they're the most reliable of people to have in an intervention, but sometimes they can be the most powerful. To be able to say, I'm going to set aside my hypocrisy and about maybe me not going and getting help today because I'm worried about you and I care about you and I want to see you get some help.
And sometimes after that person gets help, the other person that was in the room gets help.
Yep.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, there's a power in this. There's a power in that circle, and there's so many stories that I think all of us can share. I've seen firsthand. You know, we get someone into treatment or something, and then someone tugs on my sleeve and says, "Hey, I want to talk about what I've been doing and so forth." So there is a power to this circle. So how's the show been, Justin? What any topics that you forgot to mention that you want to circle back to?
No, I think it's been a great show. I think we've covered, answered the questions that have come in. Your comment, though, I want to just, give a shout out to Ted L, who was one of my angels, right? I was a week into, secondary treatment thinking I'm going to leave the halfway house. I've got a whole house up the hill. And this is somebody that I had seen and somewhat known, for a couple of years, but had no idea he was in recovery. And I saw him walking by the cafeteria. And I'm like, "What are you doing here?" And he was there to see his old counselor, and he encouraged me to not leave before the miracle happened. So you never know who's crossing our paths that can be helpful.
Yeah, we absolutely, Kathy, so much for the comments. You really are a gold star. This is 2 weeks in a row. Reach out if you've been talking to Sam or something. I'm sure there's someone on IOC that would be more than happy to kind of go further in, session or whatever. I mean, just the fact that you tuned in for 2 weeks, there seems to be something heavy on your heart. If you've been talking to Sam, reach out. I'm sure some of us, either Sam or one of the people here, would love to help you out. And we just want to help. I mean, this is what IOC is built on. It's an affordable online on demand that we can offer resources and our expertise and experience. So please keep reaching out. And as always, if you want, keep watching the show. Hope it entertains you and hope it kind of advises you too. But reach out to Sam. We would love to help you out. I'll throw myself in. I mean, I'll help you out in any way. I know the whole list of ILC interventions would do as well. So there seems to be something heavy on your heart. We'd love to help you out. So Brad, Matt, you got anything that you forgot to mention?
No, I had a good time tonight. Thank you. Thanks for letting me be a part of it.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, well, thanks, guys. It's been great.
This is exciting too because the IOC crew is all getting together up in Maryland, and this is going to be exciting for all of us. So,
fellas, I'm gonna miss it. I'm not gonna be able to make it.
What?
I knew it.
My wife had foot surgery last week, and we had hoped that her recovery would have gone along, and I would have been able to go ahead and leave the kids with her and go up and be with you guys. But she's just not at a place where I can. She can't drive yet. So, with running the kids around and whatnot for a few days, I'm going to have to stay back. Right. So I'm sorry I won't be there.
It's just like Cast and Blast all over again.
All right. We're bringing up to it. This is kind of behind the scenes. You guys, I'm going to sign off.